Welcome to Recombination Nation. Today I am talking to another auxiliary language or conlang enthusiast. Jan Okan reached out to me when I was in my putting out tentacles looking for somebody who could come and talk about Toki Pona. And luckily, they also have some experience with another major auxiliary language called Esperanto. So yeah, today we'll be talking about conlangs and auxlangs and the potential for language to transform and to reinvigorate culture, particularly online, in the coming decades. So, Yano Khan, do you want to tell us a bit more about yourself and where you started on this journey to being so interested in languages?
Hello, everyone. I'm Jan Okan. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for the introduction, Mr. Shane. So, the my experience with it started a very long time ago, actually, when I was in high school. It was like basically as opposed to most people who learn it online, it was like basically one actually, then it became two of my teachers who were interested in Esperanto, and they were like opening, uh, creating teaching sessions for it. And I just joined them, ended up joining them because I liked the teachers and I also liked languages. Uh, and it just went on from there.
Okay, okay. Now I don't know how much you want to talk about this, but I think you come from an originally a non-English speaking background. So do you think that's given you an advantage
Yeah.
in approaching other languages? I think a lot of people living in the middle of a huge language block like English never feel the pressure to more than dabble with learning other languages.
Well, so this is an interesting question, and I'd be more than happy to answer it. So the what most people who are bilingual experience is that they know it from their parents and they don't put any conscious effort in it. And for people who are in the Anglosphere, they don't see a reason to learn a second language either because they're in the Anglosphere and like the culture is like so big and like vast that like you don't get to finish up whatever's up there most of the time. I'm not saying this is applies for everyone, but but I'm Turkish, and in terms of the Turkish resources, when you go onto the web, when you try to look on the TV, surf the web, switch to TV channels, it's always like this. Like there's always something better in English. And sometimes it's in another language, but 90% of the time it's in English. So you kind of had to learn it in order to sort of like, you want to do an engineering project. I'm an engineer. It's English. You want to do an art project. If you're an artist, that's going to be inspired by English sources. So obviously there's other languages like Chinese, etc., etc. But like this acquiring of mastery by the age I was like around like 14 or 15, like kind of made it easier for me to conceptualize how to learn languages. And it just is also joyful to some degree, like to see that you're doing something for real, that
Hmm.
like your mouth is capable of doing creating these sounds and in a coherent way. It just gives you such a powerful feeling, and you kind of want more of it. Like it's also about like how your brain is structured. I'm more like a on the nerdy side. I'm not like the most PE sort of guy. So
Mm.
it's kind of everything just clicked into place with Esperanto.
Hmm. A question. Do you think the many flaws of modern English actually creates an opportunity for a more structured and logical and accessible auxiliary language to like take its place as the global digital lingua franca that everyone knows?
So with standards of all sorts, well, languages is a bit special, but like most of the time, people try to come up with a standard thinking it's universal and like perfect, like the metric system, only for it to turn out to be superseded by another thing,
Mm.
like the Planck units. So if you've been interested in like physics before, you probably know about Planck units. It's the most natural and the most universal, like the way you could communicate with an aliens type of units. And the metric system obviously wasn't informed of this obvious fact. So the problem is that when there is a standard like QWERTY or like English, people are reluctant to change it.
Hmm.
So it must be, I don't know, like 10, 15 times better uh, to actually replace that. Like, for example, ChatGPT replaced Google for most people, at
Mm.
least,
And
because
the
it's like
barrier to entry
that
has
much
to be,
better.
yeah, the barrier to entry has to be low enough, and the other side needs to be better enough to motivate people to change.
Yeah, exactly. So when we have something like ChatGPT, that's obviously better. People are going to switch to it. But like Dvorak, which is like a alternative to QWERTY,
Mm.
is like, yeah, it's much better, but like it's not like an order of magnitude better, let's
Mm.
say.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, it's like tearing down your entire house just to move a window a little bit to the left so that you get a better view.
Yeah, it's game theoretical. So
Mm.
the only way you can do this is just like capping carbon emissions through government force. Like
Hmm.
it's only possible in a um in the in a government intervention in the game theoretical forces acting upon the current equilibrium. This is called an equilibrium.
Hmm.
Uh, so the equilibrium must be changed through the artificial change in like payoffs when you choose Dvorak over QWERTY, for example. Like, for example, the government must subsidize it. Like, it should pay you off,
Interesting.
basically.
And I think looking at history, you are right. Like major language reforms, um, in terms of standardization, are usually government imposed for the purposes of making like an empire easy to administer. But I wonder if that's going to be true for all of time. We might come back to explore that in a little bit towards the end of the conversation. But let's kind of dive into some specific questions. How do you see the difference between conlangs and auxlangs? Do you think there's kind of a fuzzy boundary between them, or are they kind of distinct in your mind?
So there's actually a really specific, very specific lattice-like almost structure
Mm,
between these concepts. It's like basically a hyponym, basically like a auxlang is basically a type of conlang. It inherits every quality from a conlang
hmm.
and just adds a bit more on top of it. So an auxlang would be a conlang that's main purpose, like its purpose is to facilitate international communication.
Hmm.
So it's like every auxlang is a conlang, uh, in general usage at least. There could be some people who call English like auxlang, but like I'd be confused when people call it that. Yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, when you ask me, like all that appears in my mind is like a Venn diagram, basically. That like, okay, conlangs, big circle, auxlang, small circle, which is inside of it.
So the idea that follows on from that is an argo. Is that the opposite of an auxlang? Like an argo is designed for a small group of people to only be able to communicate with each other and exclude and confuse everyone else who doesn't understand it.
Well, that certainly could be a way to look at it, although I don't specifically like, or let's say I don't necessarily uh, have the authority or the power to say that this is exactly
Mm,
that
mm.
and that is exactly that.
Yeah.
So obviously, some people use argo to mean something else. For example, in my native language, Turkish, argo means slang, basically.
Hmm.
So it's just like if I've uh, like I think it had a different name. I can't quite make out exactly what that was, but like there was like a very specific term in the conlang community for for this type of language. Yeah.
Like a code or
Uh,
a secret language. Yeah. Well, let's
yeah.
dive
Yeah.
into. Do you want to dive into Esperanto first? And do you want to give the viewer, the audience who may not know much about it, just an overview about like what it is and how big it is and where it came from and how difficult it is to learn?
Of course, I'd be happy to. So, Esperanto is an Oxlang created by the late Dr. Zamenhof, who was like a eye doctor in like the beginning of the 20th century or like towards the end of the 19th century. So the point was to facilitate communication between the many European nations that were at war at the time. So it was obviously a noble goal. It's a bigger thing right now. Like people are trying to solve like the entire world peace. Some of at least Esperanto speakers are trying to make it out to be like this global lingua franca, or that it deserves to be a global lingua franca. At least maybe they don't realistically think it will be that, but like its initial aim and its current vision is still that,
Mm,
or let's say it's like aspiration.
mm,
So, so, but please don't get me wrong. Like most people are like learning it because it's interesting, it's fun, it's beautiful. They're not like trying to conquer the world, or like they're
mm,
not
mm,
trying to enforce like a language change upon like the entire globe, or like they don't have unrealistic aspirations or unrealistic goals either. So it's kind of like that. Yeah.
mm,
But in general, it has been like this persistent, and especially in the 20th century, across the 20th century, it has been this persistent and the most um, ubiquitous conlang, uh, like people have always looked up to. Like it was like this, almost like this golden standard. Even Toki
mm,
Pona has some inspiration from it. It's
hmm.
like almost derived from it. It's like the C of conlangs. Like if you know programming,
Yep.
C is like the
Yep.
basic thing.
Yeah. It was the first one that actually got enough right to start taking off.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't until, in fact, it was a collaboration of like the French veto in the League of Nations, like French vetoed it in terms of it becoming like a working language of the League of Nations,
Mm,
and then the Stalinist and fascist policies of the 30s, 40s, 50s, that kind of put a halt to it, but like it still survives. Yeah,
mm, mm.
it's just a few countries that were like really, really, heavy-handed against it.
Yeah, yeah. So what was your experience like learning it? Was it difficult, or did the regularity in the design make it easier than a native lang?
So it depends on what kind of a person you are. To be honest, I really enjoyed it. It was like, because everything just clicks into place. It's not like English where like, okay, yeah, okay, so I don't know, like play, place, played, okay, good. Amazar, was, were, been, what the hell? Like it wasn't like that.
Yeah, all the irregular
Like,
verbs. And most languages have
yeah,
irregular verbs.
yeah, so it's not just the regularity part of it, but like when you drive something like let's say the word for hospital, malsanuleo, which is like mal means opposite of and sano means healthy. So malsanuleo is like basically a place for unhealthy people.
Hmm.
So it's like these functional components clicking into one. Maybe it's just like the engineer nerd inside of me who just really thinks it's interesting, but it was really fun. Like it was overall really fun.
So how big is the vocabulary? That's something like a self-confessed monolingual. I'm waiting for the one language to fall in love with and learn as my second one on purpose. But like, how big is the vocabulary, or is it more complex than that? Because it's lots of roots that join together in particular patterns.
So different people will give you different answers upon this. I mean, there are people who try to restrict their vocabulary. There are people who are trying to be as poetic as they want with a large lexicon. But like, I would say you could survive in like let's say an Esperanto speaking community uh, with with much less than what you would need in English or let's
Mm,
say Tagalog or whatever. So so the I can't give you like a precise number, maybe like in the thousands or
mm,
like at most 10,000 if you want to survive. But uh, I want to tie this into Toki Pona.
mm.
Compared to Toki Pona, it's still a lot. Like
Yes.
it's like
Yeah.
it's not like Toki Pona. It's not like Toki Pona at all.
And what was your impression of the Esperanto community? Did you interact with people outside of your original class? Because I know there's various like meetings and clubs and uh, uh, you know parties and symposiums and stuff that people get together and speak that language. Did you get involved in that much? And what was the feeling of those groups of people?
So I've only been in my local community of Esperanto speakers so far. Uh, I haven't gone to like these big conferences yet,
Mm,
but the main impression I got from the community is that first of all, it's a bit political. It's like a bit aspirational. Secondly, uh, it's it consists of people who are like really into languages, like
mm,
really like they like to talk about linguistics, how language works, that sort of stuff. But this is to be expected. So the bottom line is that they're just political and like aspirational. Like you can talk about climate change forever with them, like
yeah.
for hours, whatever, you know.
It's an interesting kind of self-imposed filter. Like if you want to learn Italian, you're more likely to run into people who love like Italian food or Renaissance art, or like there's various reasons people could be attracted to learning the language to access that culture, or they already
Yeah.
speak it and they have, maybe stereotypical cultural tendencies. But for a constructed language, the filter that is applied to people who like make the decision and the effort to learn it is so much more. It's like the difference between people who, decided to leave Europe and migrate to America. Like they had a different subset of the temperaments to be like that adventurous and risk embracing. But for a conlang, that's like people who decide to, walk to the North Pole. It's a much rarer breed of people who like go that extra mile.
Yeah, it's usually well, I'm gonna state the obvious. They're obviously the engineer or artsy types, mostly
Hmm.
engineer types, who
Mm.
are like have codes in their bio and stuff like that. So it's I mean, I thought it'd be obvious, but like I still want to say it just to, nail it in. It's like, these types of people, people who are like basically, how do I put this? Uh, like nerdy.
Yeah, yeah. Have you met any like rare exceptions to that tendency? Like people who you've met in the Esperanto community and it's like you're here for really different reasons to most other people.
Oh, there are native speakers, obviously, yeah.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
they just know it from birth,
They
and
just have
they're
nerdy
rolling with it.
parents.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, now we should probably spend some more time talking about Toki Pona because I think that's the one you've spent more time involved in.
Yeah.
And again, for the listeners who are kind of new to this field, can you give us an overview of Toki Pona, like where it came from and how it was put together and how it's structured?
So Toki Pona is a again another constructed language whose purpose is a bit different. It was created in 2001 by a Canadian woman called Sonia Lang, and its purpose was to eliminate unnecessary detail and sort of adhere to principles of like minimalism.
Hmm.
So it's like more like an art language. It's like an engineered art language
Mm.
more than a practical aux lang.
Yeah,
But
it
that
was a
doesn't mean
philosophical psychological experiment, I believe.
yes, exactly. So I don't want to get into too much detail because it's not necessary.
Mm.
But there are some philosophical and psychological aspects to it, of course.
Mm.
So it could be taken to mean a lot of things. Like it could, if you want, you could make it into an aux lang. Most people don't, and the community doesn't care enough about it. But like,
Mm.
it works. So when I say it's not its main goal is artistic, that doesn't mean it's like impossible to communicate
Yeah, yeah.
happily and like easily with that. So it's
And
like so can I give you a little segue about like types of languages?
oh, sure, sure.
So
I'd probably just quickly let people know how many words there are in Toki Pona, because that's the most
oh
remarkable thing. If they've never heard of it before, you'll be surprised when you hear.
there are 120 words originally, but some people use more than that.
Mm.
The lowest number is like 118. There are some people who go up to 137, I think, something like
Hmm.
that.
Hmm. A
It's like it's
nice prime
fuzzy.
number.
Yeah. So yeah, I personally stop at like 121 words.
Hmm.
Uh,
Oh, out of
but
curiosity, how do people enforce those limits? Like, what prevents it just getting bigger and bigger and more things being thrown in over time?
oh, that's an excellent question. People mostly so it's like when you get into a culture, there are some ways of speaking that are like kind of slangish and
Hmm.
like kind of like you don't want to be you don't want to be that guy who says that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
For example, in English, it would be something like uh, you know, you're saying something like "let bro cook." Like you wouldn't say that in a formal environment. You
Yes.
wouldn't say that. So it's kind of like that. The more you get proficient at it, obviously at the beginning it's kind of easier to add more words whenever you get stuck because
Yeah.
you're not fluent. But like the more you speak it, and the more like the established literature you get inculcated in, it's like less of a hassle to speak with less words. And most people like who take the language as like a practical tool and like a part of their daily life. I don't see them using a lot of what they call nimisin, which is like basically extra words in Toki Pona.
Mm.
So nimisin would be an extra word in Toki Pona. So we call them extra words because they're extra. It's kind of considered slang, but like, can you use it? Obviously, there's no like enforcing authority. I personally, and a lot of people around me use as little words as possible like, let's say, uh, let's say a more complicated word kind of is not necessary.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we kind of talk about those words sometimes or make fun of those words. Like
And I've
there's a word called, yeah, sorry,
yeah. Oh
go
no,
ahead.
I just before we you had a point you wanted to make, but I just wanted to quickly make people realize how long did it take for you to learn the word set and then how much after that to feel fluent?
So it took one day to learn all of the words because,
Wow. One
uh,
day.
yeah, it was like in practice was like probably like a few hours. It's been like many years since I've done that, but like Like once I learned all of the words, I didn't forget any of them after that, really.
Interesting.
So this is not that many words. It's not really it's really hard to forget about them because
Mm,
the thing is what I when I learned all of the words, I just immediately got to using it. Like fluency uh, like came in a few years because fluency is like a really slimy thing. Like it could
mm,
be anything from like not dying in a Toki Pona speaking city
mm.
to actually like translating the works of Shakespeare into Toki Pona.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
like in terms of the Shakespeare thing, I probably took me like more than several years.
Mm. And it's tricky because you need to have a higher level of thinking about the order you use that limited set of words to make it do what you want it to do. So even though it's a simple vocabulary, it isn't necessarily always a simple language in the way that you can use it.
Uh, so the thing is that you just speak really fast when you speak it. So
Hmm.
that's one thing. So since you speak really fast when you speak it, it's like basically a rapid fire of information about the thing whose word does not exist in Tokipona. Like let's say a
Mm.
skyscraper, you know, you could say like Tomolisuli li Noka ona lisuli li tawasebi tan ampa li suli lonsebi, whatever. Like you can say a lot of stuff um, about a skyscraper, and that like you just rapid fire information, and like people are like, yeah, they just understand.
They build up a picture.
Yeah. So
Mm.
it's not even like it's not like it doesn't feel like a limitation. It just feels like, I have to, whatever, convey the information I want to convey. It's not like
Mm.
I need a word for it. Oh my God, I need a word so much for this or anything like that.
Sorry, I interrupted you before. You were trying to make a general point about uh you only started the question. I'm so sorry I interrupted. Do you remember? I might have
I
I
don't
might have
remember.
got you too far
Sorry.
off the track. That's okay. I wanted to ask you about your reflection on learning Esperanto versus learning Toki Pona. Like, how did those very differently structured languages feel as you kind of immersed into them?
So with Esperanto, it was more like basically checking the dictionary constantly, whereas in Tokipona, it was like basically thinking it inside of my head, like, yeah, what am I gonna say next,
Hmm.
basically. So
And
it was like basically you can calculate it inside of your head when you're speaking Tokipona, but like in Esperanto, you just have to check this dictionary. Like when you're typing, translating something or whatever, you know all the rules. The rules are as simple as Tokipona when it comes to Esperanto, uh, but speaking it is like, um, or let's say speaking or writing it, or like producing this language by yourself is a bit different, and it requires a dictionary
mm,
in like Esperanto because you already know all the rules. You just need the words. Whereas
mm,
in Tukpan, it's like whatever,
yeah.
like you just wing it.
I thought of another interesting question. In terms of speakers with different native language accents, is Esperanto or Tokipona easier to understand what other people are saying? Because I know Tokipona was designed with a very simple a sound set, a very simple phoneme set. Does that actually play out in practice for you?
Oh yeah, there's much the amount of people who struggle with Tokipona pronunciation or cause actually confusion is much less
Mm,
than when it comes to Esperanto. It's definitely like hands down,
mm,
Tokipona is much easier for like in terms of learning is Tokipona is easier on a global scale, and there is no question about that. But in terms of mastering, that's a bit different, especially for European people whose native language is Indo-European and very similar to Esperanto, in fact.
mm-hmm,
It's going to be much more difficult to master Tokipona because, like I want to give an example. So like there's a verb called pali, which comes from Esperanto fari in Toki Pona.
Ah.
So most people would assume it means to do, right? Like, because fari means, you know, to do in like French or whatever.
Hmm.
So the people assume that it means to do. Like like that's like a very culturally biased way to look at it because in Tokipona there are no verbs. Like there are only predicates.
Hmm.
So it's like to do is basically just doing something, but like as a verb. Like it's basically like the word something, but as a verb. Do doesn't
Hmm.
convey any information in English. It's just do. You do
Yeah.
what? We don't know. So when you use the word for instead of using the word for something, which is io, instead of saying mi io to mean I did something, you say mi pali e io. That's that's like really common trap for like English and like let's say French, Spanish, whatever speakers. Like if your native language is something like Turkish, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, that's like that doesn't make any sense.
Mm.
But there are, I don't I just want to say that I'm sure some people still use pali to mean to do, the
Hmm.
word pali to mean to do, and that's also acceptable. It's not like a huge crime against Tokipona's values or whatever. It's just whatever.
Well, I meant to ask that too. Like, how does the sometimes fairly complex grammar of Toki Pona get regularized or kept consistent across all of the different speakers? Or is it allowed to be flexible and free flowing? If you get your idea across, then it's correct.
So grammar is much less flexible than vocabulary. Like when somebody says like something like "let bro cook" in like Tokipona,
Mm.
it's like okay, whatever, like you might tell them, well, yeah, you know, well, yeah, that's an interesting way to say that concept or whatever. But like when somebody actually brings a new word or like new grammatical construct, you're like, what? Why would you even do that? Like people are much more reactive to it in my experience.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, so the grammar is like either people correct you, which is obviously not nice most of the time because that's kind of against Tokipona's what it stands for. It's like more about like open communication. But what most likely happens is that people just don't understand you or
Yeah.
just kind of debate it like should this exist, should we do this, is this good, like
Do
or
people
like
sometimes restate the idea in the more acceptable structure, the to kind of nicely demonstrate to the person who is less familiar with the language?
there's only so much restructuring you could do, to be honest.
Mm,
Like
hmm.
I
Hmm.
mean if a person does not understand Tokipona that well and you're trying to explain to them something, all you do is like speak slower because you just assume they know all the words already.
Yeah,
All they need
yeah.
is like some processing speed.
Well,
Uh, so,
I didn't get a chance to ask about like what is the vibe in the Toki Pona community and how does that compare to Esperanto? Like when you hang out with Toki Pona speakers, what are you normally in for?
well, this is a perfect question because I've been in like a Tokipona summit before.
Hmm.
I've seen the vibes. It's very similar to the online community.
Hmm.
First of all, that I must say. It's like basically, I don't want to say cloying, like sweet to a disgusting degree, but like it's really sweet. Like it's like basically sugar filled. Like it's like basically eating Haribos or whatever it's called. Uh, it's like sugar filled.
Hmm.
So people are really sweet, but sometimes some people get annoyed at like little nitpicky details.
Mm.
And also the sweetness also comes at a cost. It may be cloying from time to time. Uh, But in general, the general vibe is that uh, again, like just like Esperanto, it's nerdy to some degree. It's aspirational to some degree. You know, there are some aspirations people have about Toki Pona.
Mm,
There are some like a lot of philosophizing, a lot of art that they do. They're really artsy at the same time. They're still most people are or engineering types, but like there are some there's more artsiness to it
hmm.
in Toki Pona community as opposed to Esperanto. Uh,
Do you think the lower barrier to entry is the key to that? That it takes less of a huge commitment to like absorb all of the words before you can even get started?
well, the lower barrier of entry is basically like having causes a lot of different people, a lot of different kinds of like the variety to be big in like Toki Pona community. But in Esperanto, it's like more of like a cluster of
Mm,
like it's like more of like a tribe.
mm.
Like in Toki Pona, there's like always like every day there's someone new. Like so.
And I would
Uh,
imagine for a lot of orc slangs, that diversity of motivations behind the people coming into it could set the language up for splitting into factions. But Toki Pona has such a clear, defined core that it feels like it's relatively immune to that risk. Have you seen any like risk or like ruptures in the community at any time, or is it so simple and cohesive that it's never really had a chance to begin?
so Toki Pona community is like really like takes their values to their core. So
Mm,
as I said, when you use a new word, it's like it's not frowned upon, but like, people try not to do that. Like a lot of people
mm,
do it. We just trust each other not to expand the vocabulary for no reason. If somebody used a new word, like an extra word, we just trust that it's important to them and like it's valuable to them or
mm,
whatever.
mm,
There's a person who created a word for trains and like I respect that because their entire life is revolves around trains.
mm,
Like so it's like we respect that, we allow that, we tolerate that because it's a good thing. It's good to have diversity, but at the same time, Tokipona community is based at this very diversity is based on the strong faith in our values, in our goals with the language. Like like if somebody were to say, okay, so I'm just gonna make Tokipona like this, like a bit different, or like let's say whatever, like twice as big in terms of vocabulary.
mm.
We're not gonna stop them. But like
But the people aren't necessarily going to follow along with it because the core is so functional.
yeah, it will be a different language. Yeah.
Mm, mm,
So there are a lot of splinter groups in Tokipona, no doubt about it. But like Tokipona itself is like its its essence is like very much held up by the community itself.
mm,
So
mm.
people have this collective responsibility towards each other to respect each other's nothings, which means their way of speaking,
Yeah, yeah.
and to allow that to like combine into a prolific community of
Mm.
like language.
Now, you also mentioned the kind of sweetness in the atmosphere when you get together with Toki Pona speakers, and that reminded me that the inventor of the language, Sonia Lang, created it to limit her ability to get stuck in like depressive, negative thinking. And do you think those two observations are related? Does Toki Pona actually influence the way you tend to think when you're in that mode?
Well, I'll let you judge. There are a lot of like loaded words in like um, in like uh, normal speech in English, let's say,
Mm,
like in casual speech in English. There are a lot of loaded words. Like for example, the word like for example, I don't necessarily know what else I can come up with right now, but like let's say terrorism, it's like a
Hmm.
hugely loaded word,
Yeah.
right? So in Tokipona, that would be something like utala ike, like bad fight, bad fighting.
Mm.
You have to like sort of like be like a child in that case. Like you can't be like go onto the political stage and say this is terrorism. Like
Mm.
that doesn't work. Like you have to describe exactly what it is. Like oh yeah, it's just bad. I think it's bad. Like oh yeah, you think this specific group is like this. Well, you have to be honest about what you think about them, or
Yeah. And
you can't like use like these words like for example, um, the word, for example, loser. Oh, they called me a loser, or they called me a freak, or whatever. Well,
mm,
in order to call you a freak, for example, in Toki Pona, you have to call them like bad. You can't call someone a freak without calling them bad.
yeah, you
Like,
have to fully
doesn't
explain yourself each time. And each of the words you use have so many other connotations that they don't end up like tainted like those that single loaded word in English.
yeah, you're basically honest about yourself, and the subjectivity part plays a lot. Uh, like the designer of the language made it so that especially the words pona and ike, which mean good and bad, are actually closer to in English, like more proper and outrageous. Because
Mm.
because let's think about that. Like you call your friend Yampona a good person. So that's more like a friendly person to you. It's like more like a subjective assessment. So
Mm.
you have to admit to subjectively assessing stuff, especially word Pona and with the words Pona and Ike, good and bad.
Mm.
So it's really uh, because once you realize practicality of the language, you're not going to be sitting around saying that oh yeah like ontologically and metaphysically and like at the same time in terms of like contaxiology or whatever, this person is good because they did this and that. Like you're not going to do that. Like
Mm.
you're going to make a subjective assessment 99% of the time, and since you have a limited vocabulary and you can't call things evil or virtuous, that's what you end up with.
Mm. How does Esperanto compare? Does it influence your mindset? Does it make you kind of refined and lofty? Or I'm trying to imagine what it would what effect it would have on you when you're thinking and speaking in it.
So one thing I want to say is that Toki Pona and Esperanto have very different goals on the surface, but like they're actually really similar when it comes to the extensions of these goals. Toki Pona can be actually a really good international language. It could.
Mm.
And Esperanto could be a really good philosophically simple language because it is simple.
Mm.
But like, so it's about how the community wants to present itself more than anything else.
Mm.
So yeah, I think most of the things are overlapping, but like obviously, the way community presents itself has a reason, and that reason is because Esperanto has less of an emphasis in structured, clear, simple, and open communication. It's
Mm.
more about practical international communication. But yeah, it's 100% certain that like if you speak Esperanto, you're gonna have clearer thoughts. Like
Mm.
obviously you can like loan words, so that's a common pitfall. You can just like call uh, someone like a freak or whatever by learning the appropriate word. But like you can always like adhere to Tokipona's philosophy in most areas.
Mm.
And in fact, they're like, by the way, Esperanto heavily influenced Tokipona,
Mm.
or let's say not heavily, but like to a significant degree.
Mm. Well, I mean, that brings up a really big question I want to ask you. So, Esperanto has kind of stood the test of time, but it's had like a century and it hasn't taken over the world yet. Maybe it would have if like history played out a little bit differently. Toki Pona only emerged, I think, like a decade ago, and it's exploded in interest and uptake. Um, could you see either of them still winning the race to become a global auxiliary language, or do you think some other language that's kind of inspired by both of their successes and weaknesses that could actually strike something of a middle ground?
Well, that's a very interesting question. To be honest, uh, well, I mean, so obviously, I don't think Toki Pona is for everyone. I mean, that'd be very arrogant of me to say, like, my interests are everybody's interests. But
Mm.
uh, it, does it have a much more of a like a temp time-based, or let's say a relative success to Esperanto, especially in its early years? Yeah, I'm not going to deny that. I mean, is it overall more successful than Esperanto? No.
Mm.
Like it's still not the language that people think about when they hear the word conlang.
Mm.
So Toki Pona being an international language uh, is like English being an international language. English had the occasions and the necessary conditions,
Mm.
like the necessary and sufficient conditions to become whatever it is right now.
Mm.
So Toki Pona could be in a much different way. I'm not saying that it's going to colonize the entire planet and like whatever. Like it could be in a much different way. Like it still wouldn't be like the community's goal or like its aspiration as much as Esperanto's is. Obviously, the community wants it to be bigger, more powerful, more of containing more people and like being more popular, having more funds, resources, that sort of stuff. Obviously, the community wants that. Like the main goal is to allow creative and open expression of oneself.
Mm.
So, like, would a different language that learns from Esperanto and Toki Pona be a international Oxlang? I think, to be honest, I think Toki Pona is like as far as we'll get right now, like
Mm-hmm.
for the conceivable future, because Toki Pona was a new concept. It was done before, and it's fairly good at what it does.
Mm.
So we need another new leap, another new leap. Like until like since that's something I don't know that I don't know. Like it's that serious. So
Mm.
that I can't really say anything. Like maybe it's like aliens come and like everything changed. Who knows? Like whatever. Like
Mm.
like the future like like can have anything. So I can't say anything. Like I could have never predicted that Toki Pona would come up. Like
Mm.
like if
Mm.
I was in 2001, I've never predicted that it would take off like this. But like as it stands right now, Toki Pona is growing.
Mm.
It's relatively more successful than Esperanto. Would it grow to be an international language? Even if it did, it would be coincidentally, not necessarily, because its structure is wanted by that, wants that, requires that, or aims for that. It's
Mm.
supposed to be international in its essence, in its core, like to be culturally neutral. It should be a new concept. It should be a new idea.
Mm.
Like the aim is is like much less to replace English. So it's like basically like a uh, like something we're not going to deny, we're not gonna say no to. Like it's also not something uh, that's uh, that's necessarily going to be everyone's business, to be honest.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this links on to the idea that the internet is a really new technological and cultural force that is operating on a global scale like nothing before. And I think, do you agree that that could be the new impetus that gives people a reason to voluntarily learn a new language like Tokeponas so they can at least do basic communication with anyone on the planet who has taken a few days to learn that word set?
Um, hmm. So it's not that easy to it's not that easy. It is easy,
Mm.
but fluency takes time. So
Yeah.
obviously, by day 2 or day 3, you're gonna be able to perhaps not like if you take your time, you're gonna be able to not struggle at all.
Mm.
But like if only if you take your time, like maybe you take like 10 minutes to write like a sentence,
Hmm.
remembering all the words and appropriate constructions, you're not gonna struggle. But uh, that's also the strength of Toki Pona. Since it's so easy to get started, that might be, and since the philosophy of minimalism is so attractive, in fact, it might be it might be a coincidentally successful language globally. Yeah. So if I were to be stranded on an island with a complete stranger and I had to teach them a language, Toki Pona, obviously,
Hmm.
who
Hmm.
cares?
Well,
Like,
a related thing, do you suspect the missing ingredient is culture? So, for example, imagine there was a brilliant movie that was created in Tokopona, and having all of those artists who are like interested in it is probably a huge asset on this front. So that people around the world, if you want the full experience of that movie, learn this language and you can start to understand it in its full experience as it was intended rather than relying on subtitles.
100%. Yeah. So the kind of person who learns Toki Pona and has an influence over the world will cause this language to be a great success in the future. But that's like for certain. There'll be some person eventually
Mm,
who manage to do this. Hopefully, I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but like it's very likely that like there'll be at least some work of art or something that
mm,
will influence people to learn Tokipona. But like, will it be a cultural phenomenon to the degree of like becoming a global lingua franca? It's very hard to say. It's probably not going to happen.
mm,
Uh, so the problem is that, yeah, you could create cultural works in like Tokipona, and that will get you a lot of publicity and a lot of time under the limelight. But is it is it enough to make people learn the language? This hasn't been tested yet. We don't know. Like my
mm,
my idea is that it will be like this, sort of like like when you go to a like best case scenario, when you go to like meet a new person, for example, and you tell them, oh, by the way, I know Tokipan. They're not like gonna ask you what's Tokipan. Oh, they're gonna say that's cool. That's an
mm.
interesting language.
Yeah.
I'm glad you know it. Like so
We're still very
that
much in the
becomes
early adopter stage of Tokipona.
yeah.
What about
So
songs and
that's
music with their like lyrics and like you if you love a song, you'll listen to it like 100 times, whereas a movie you might watch twice. So the capacity for absorbing a new language is probably much higher in songs than it is in movies, I'm guessing.
um I honestly don't have any idea about this, to be honest. Like when I was learning English, movies were like a bit more influential, to be honest. But like that's just
Hmm.
my experience.
Yeah, yeah.
So, so one thing because songs kind of incorporate like kind of forced language. They kind of have to fit the scheme, the
Yeah,
rhymes
yeah,
and
it
whatever.
never sounds quite right. So it has to be distorted around the music. Well, another question I really want to ask you too is children and to a lesser degree teenagers absorb and modify language much more readily than adults. And has Tokipona had any successes um, reaching younger people where your language acquisition is so much easier?
Well, it's definitely more on the younger side compared to Esperanto.
Hmm.
And yeah,
Okay.
so it's like, I mean, people are interested in it. Uh, People are interested in it because it appeals to something more than like just material desires. Like by the time you reach 25, 30, like that kind of thing is beaten out of most people. So
Hmm. Hmm.
actually, even I, like I'm not a teenager anymore, but like when I was a teenager, that's when I started to learn conlangs.
Mm.
Like because life experience becomes like a bit more harsh in people's 20s, maybe it becomes a bit easier in 30s. But like it's just like this like new people, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, who are like on internet more, are
Mm.
more likely to learn this language, but like not people in their uh like adulthood
Yeah.
who are like more career or could be more career oriented. I'm like I like when I went on the meetup, the summit in like Europe, uh there were a lot of people in their 20s, but like most of them had started to learn it as teenagers, and there were like the teenagers were like, you know, newly starting or whatever. So yeah.
Have you heard of any examples of teenagers learning Toki Pona as an argot so they could speak it among their friends and the adults around them wouldn't understand what they're saying? It becomes a secret language just for teenagers. But then coincidentally, all of the teenagers are learning it and around the world, and 5 years later, it's becoming an international auxiliary language through that mechanism.
Um, I think the incentives are too low for that,
Uh,
uh, but but okay, so that's just my opinion. It
mhm,
could. I'm not saying that it couldn't. Why wouldn't? Why would I like say something like that
mm.
about a language I love and cherish? But uh,
Well, I'd bring up the
the-
example of Gen Alpha brain rot speak. Like there's a lingo that's emerged on the internet of all of these like outrageous variations on English that adults are completely clueless about what the younger people are talking about. And I almost wonder if rather than Toki Pona functioning as this pure like parallel language that those words could bleed into English. So you could have a kind of Creole of your native language and Tokipona that functions like an argot. But if you need to, you can prune your language back just to the limited word set of Tokipona and learn to speak it in the more formal, internationally accepted way.
if it becomes part of hop culture, there is nothing stopping it from happening.
Mm,
But when you said like do people speak Tokipona as like this sort of like coded language? Um, like I think I've seen it as a meme, but like for practical purposes, that's most of the time that's not the only reason why people speak it.
mm.
It's usually along other stuff that are more important. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just interesting. Like a single tool, like a language like Toki can be used in so many different ways. And I don't know, I'm just curious to see if people are using Toki for different purposes and in different combinations. Another question I really want to talk about is if you have any thoughts about how emerging AI technology could be used in the development or the adoption and spread of auxlangs like Toki.
Well, I don't think AI has been like trained enough on Tokipona to for me to make a comment on this because I don't use it at all
Mm-hmm.
for any Tokipona conversation or any Tokipona like for example, you might write a cover letter using ChatGPT or at least ask it to improve it to some
Mm.
degree, maybe fix the punctuation errors or whatever. But Tokipona is such a personal and like nerdy thing that like you want all the control for yourself. So the kind of person who learns Tokipona is not the kind of person who will defer everything to the AI and like go to Bahamas and like not care about anything. It's like not that kind of person. Like it's like the person that really is like fastidious and like cares about all of the details.
Do you think it
So,
could become associated with being anti-AI or AI skeptical? That if you've learnt and can speak Toki it's a way of distinguishing yourself from languages that the AI has already mastered, that it's a point of distinction.
That's certainly part of community. There's certainly a part of community that does this, I'm
Mm,
sure. Like not necessarily to distinguish themselves from AI. Let me be clear. They don't want to distinguish themselves from AI, therefore they learn Toki Pona. This is not true. They
mm,
don't do this. But what they're doing is that, yeah, as a Toki Pona speaker, I'm skeptical of AI. I personally am more on like I'm more on the transhumanist side. Like I don't really like I'm like for technology for most of the time, but
mm,
I kind of agree with some of the concerns, like just like I voiced, like AI is like, taking away control from people when they're trying to learn languages. It's making learning languages kind of useless, which is like, takes all of the fun out of it, etc., etc.
hmm
Obviously, these sorts of stuff, what they create is a lot of the time it could be meaningless slop, like,
mm,
whatever. These sorts of criticisms come from all sorts of groups, but like in Tokpana community, it's still similar in my opinion. Like it's like 50-50. There's nothing like special going on in like the Tokipona community
mm.
that like basically makes it against AI or for AI. Uh, all I can say is that the against AI wind is blowing a bit harder these times.
Mm. Well, a related question. Uh, if the future becomes more subject to heavy surveillance, particularly using AI, um, could you imagine languages like Tokipona that are quite small and easy to get a handle on could pop up as Argos? So like a group of, 30 people who are friends say, okay, this is our new language, take a week to learn the basics, and then they can communicate in the open online. And even if they're being surveilled, there's a degree of plausible deniability about what they were actually saying because the language is like, a month old. So I don't know, is that a little bit too dystopian and speculative for your taste? If you have any thoughts on that?
Well, for practical purposes, I don't think that's like okay. So first of all, Tokipona is not comfortable speaking until you got like to a degree of like fluency,
Mm,
because like so people wouldn't they would prefer like encryption methods or
yeah,
whatever
yeah,
technology they may use, or like if they're so desperate they could just learn like like Pig Latin or whatever
yeah,
it's called in English.
yeah.
Yeah, so the problem is that when you speak Tokipona, it's like, yeah, you could learn and understand it in like a few days. Like it's not a like a comfortable thing to use unless you're like really fluent in it.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
let's not
that
say really fluent. There's nothing called really fluent. You're either fluent or not.
hmm
Uh, or at least that's like, I don't want to call it really fluent basically. Maybe it's not binary. Maybe it's like it's not that you're either fluent or not. Maybe there's like a spectrum, but like I still don't want to say like, you need to be very fluent. If you're fluent, it's enough for you to, because it's true for every language,
mm,
like in like Arabic, if you're fluent, you're already comfortable. So yeah, that's what I want to clarify. Yeah.
mm, mm. Um, uh, are there any examples, it might be too early, of Tokipona words bleeding into other native languages as slang? Like that could be an interesting bridge between the different language systems. Because
So
like English loans words all the time from other languages. I wonder how long it's going to be until it loans a Tokipona word.
so Tokipona is categorically not part of pop culture anymore, yet. My
Mm.
bad. The opposite, yet. So yeah, so since it's not part of pop culture yet at all, I don't think for mainstream usage that will happen yet.
Mm.
But for obviously, Tokipona speakers use a lot of Tokipona vocabulary. when speaking English. Sometimes they mix it up together, like,
Hmm.
like I went to a Esun and bought like a kili. That would mean like I went to a shop and bought like a fruit.
Hmm.
So like they do that, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, interesting, interesting. I always love exploring those kind of, well, Recombination Nation, the name of this podcast, is about that kind of crossover and hybridization that happens in culture all the time. And it's such a powerful force, but it's also the thing that leads to languages evolving into mutually uninterpretable subsets. And I mean, that's what where this whole movement is like trying to find a bridge across. And I wonder if you have any thoughts, like, is a global auxiliary language even possible, or would it also need the development of uh, some kind of decision-making structure that includes everybody on the planet who speaks that language? And like, how big is the challenge that we're actually taking on here? And do you have any ideas about like if we can solve the issue of like agreeing what the word for, sun is on the scale of 8 billion people? Is that going most of the way to leading to world peace and understanding?
Well, so there are a lot of differing opinions on this, and this is an extremely political question too. So I'm personally, I don't know enough to make like specific comments about like what the world ought to be like in the future. But like one thing I might say is that uh, in this day and age, yeah, we need to, if we want to save the world, we need to unite. But whether it's under communism or capitalism, I don't know. I don't care.
Mm,
Uh, I'm more on the left side, but I still don't care. So the idea is that uh, when we establish like a global community, the global community is able to uh, like uh, cherish the values of its language, just like how Toki Pona does in
mm,
its community. If
mhm.
we come to that stage, we don't need like a central body. Like, so my view is that, uh, I mean, would it be better if like the entire world was a federation and there was like a entire hierarchy that was ruling it? Uh, Maybe better than having wars at all. I don't know.
Mhm,
But
mm.
if it was a community, just like Toki Pona community or Esperanto community is a bit more hierarchical, but like, let's say it's the Toki Pona community, I think then it would be like a natural thing because one of the failings of Esperanto is that, yeah, this hierarchy that we're talking about, like this like strict formalisms.
Yeah, and
So
it's built for fractioning. If two people at the top of the pyramid disagree fundamentally, then the whole community can split.
yeah, so the best way to fight splitting is that to have a strong core, but like like not to even acknowledge it as like an opposing force, but like an equally valid opinion and listening to it, so that you can you can continue communicating. So it's like more like the the compassion that's needed all around the world, like
Mm,
at any moment. Like, in Israel, in like Russia, whatever, these places, um, uh, they can not stop wars just because they're like, you know, speaking in different language. They need understanding as well.
hmm.
So it's like a more like a global community than a global empire that we're seeking. That's the only comment I can make. As like, to be honest, like, I'm like my career is in engineering, so I don't think I have enough credentials to speak on these like these political. As I said, the question is very political, but like at
I
least I all I
appreciate
can say is that
your humility. I also appreciate that you're willing to at least speculate because these are such fascinating ideas.
thank you. So the community itself, uh, if it has common values and a common system, then I think everything else will fall into place. That's all I'm gonna say.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm. Yeah, it's definitely a huge puzzle to have a shared language that people agree enough about to remain cohesive, that has some capacity to evolve over time, that it's not just set in stone forever. There has to be some mechanism to allow things to change. Otherwise, it's not a living language. Or maybe that's not the case. Maybe it just needs to be this is the thing if you want to talk to everyone. Um, but I mean, ultimately, people need to speak with other people all over the world in this language to keep that community, to actually build the community that the language is hoping to enable.
Yeah.
Mm. I have a general question as well. We're getting close to wrapping up. What advice would you give to somebody who's interested in exploring or learning conlangs and auxiliary languages? Where should they start?
It depends a lot on what language you're trying to learn, to be honest. But so actually, I'm unfortunately unable to give very specific advices for for the languages because there are many,
Hmm.
and I can't give any general one either because they're very different. So, uh, like if you're trying to learn Esperanto, you can use Learnu. Yeah, if you want to learn Toki Pona, you can use Wasona. But let's say if you want to learn SQL, which is another conlang, I personally don't know. Like every language has like its different structure. So,
Mm.
like for example, when it comes to Tokipona, you want to learn all of the words as soon as possible. That's how I did it at least. You don't
Mm.
need to. You can take your time, but like I just like created flashcards and like looked at them until I memorized all of it. I didn't really do anything else really.
Hmm.
That's all I needed to do. But again, this is highly personal, but it's a completely different method than I use learning Esperanto, which was to use Duolingo. So, because Esperanto's lexicon is huge, it it doesn't make sense to memorize all of it in a flashcard,
Hmm.
in a set of flashcards. But yeah, for Esperanto, I would say just try to speak to as many people as possible, and at the same time try to learn like through Learno or like Duolingo, although some people kind of hate on it right now. It's in a bit of a controversy. And if you
Mm.
want to learn Tokipona, you can either just like look at the grammar and all of the words. You don't need any special tool, or if you want to learn it in a slower pace, you can use wasona.com.
Hmm. Brilliant, brilliant. Well, would those be the links that I should pop in the show notes so people can follow those directions if they're interested? Do you have anything
Uh,
else you'd like to point people towards, or occasionally I'll have a guest who is happy for people to reach out to them, but that may not be the case in your situation.
uh, to be honest, I would be happy to provide those, but like since I'm talking right now, so where should I put it? Like I don't know.
Oh, we'll
I
follow up by email so I can just check I've got those details correct to make it easy for people to follow the trail if they want to take it further.
Okay.
Hmm. Okay, well, I think that's everything. So, Jan Okan, thank you so much for taking the time to tell us about your
Thank you.
experiences and your thoughts about uh, two of the most prominent constructed languages that are in the world today. And it's been a fascinating conversation.
Thank you.
If you'd like to read more of my work, sign up for free at Substack Recombination Nation. A paid subscription supports all the work I do and gets you access to the archive of past posts. Next week, I'll be talking to Andiru, the creator of the auxiliary language Baseyu.